that I welcome this kind of examination, because people have got to know whether or not their president is a crook. Well, I'm not a crook.
We can make our beloved country the source of all the dreams and the opportunities that she was missing.
Welcome to the American Idiots Podcast, the show where we take the most divisive headlines and put them to the debate with our diverse group of hosts. Join us as we leave no story uncovered and spare no politician. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Holy crap, I'm out of focus. Hold on. Let's see if we can get the camera to focus. I don't know. Anyway, welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the American Idiots. I'm your host, Money Mike. Of course, we are trying out a new platform. So if things look a little bit different, anything like that, please feel free to let us know how you like it. But same situation. If you like the show, go ahead and like us on Facebook. Go on to YouTube and give us a like there. Hit the notification bell so you'll be notified whenever we whenever we stream. As well as if you're our audio only listeners, go ahead and listen to us there on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, all of those good things. Give us a follow and leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. But with that being said, after a long break, one pretty much my fault entirely, seasonal allergies and all sorts of there's personal stuff going on, I'm very happy to welcome back the Manny Hispani into the studio. Manny, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Last week was my fault. My new job, kind of sucked me into the vortex of. Do what?
I said, kayfabe, Manny. I was going to take all the heat. Come on now.
I'm just saying, my new job sucked me into the vortex of overtime. It's like, holy smokes. I think I got off at 11.
Oh, wow. But hey.
Yep, 8 in the morning to 11 at night.
Look at life on the positive side. You ain't going to be mad when you see that paycheck. I'm just saying.
Right. But if you work that much, you don't ever get to see the paycheck.
You ain't lying about that either, man. I swear, the more overtime I work, the more taxes, which means that like 4 hours of overtime on a check equals like $10 after everything.
Right.
Honestly, a little depressing.
But I'm just saying, when you're working that much, by the time you get off, nothing's open, so it ain't like you're spending it anyways.
You ain't lying about that either. By the way, I tried a new restaurant last week with my wife. It's this place on McCain called the Mighty Crab. Holy crap, that was amazing.
Is it?
Yes.
Might have to check that out.
It was definitely on the expensive side, I think, for the both of us. She got a pound of shrimp. I got some crab legs and a half a pound of shrimp. And I think after everything, it ended up being 80 or close to 90. So, I mean, it's more on the expensive side, but it's pretty
right.
good. It is pretty darn
cool.
Good. Right on. Well, you've been doing anything fun recently? I know you guys had a show since we had our last episode.
Yeah, we had an event a couple of weeks ago. That popped off pretty good. Had a couple new faces out. Everybody seemed to really like it. Dalton Hall was our newest candidate that we pulled in, and everybody really gave him a big reception, so that was good. Of course, let me think. Main event was Pineapple Jack versus Troy Twain, and the sound when Troy Twain beat Pineapple Jack for the title was crazy.
Really? That's awesome.
Yes, everybody couldn't believe that Troy Twain pulled it out. And I'll be posting that in a couple of weeks. Actually, it's going to be 4 weeks. That'll be the fourth Friday when that part of the video posts. But
Awesome.
But yeah, we swerved the crowd, man. He used a chain, got the win. Referee found the chain after the fact, disqualified him.
Oh, snap. Okay. I like it. I like it. Also, I don't know. I saw the big news. I don't know if this necessarily is your doing or what have you, but I also saw the news that the SEW podcast is coming back.
Yes, and no, not my doing. I can't take all the credit for that. I was contacted about it and let them know that I really don't have time to do more podcasts, but if they wanted to pick it up and run with it, that was more than welcome to. So
outstanding.
So
Well,
they are going to get on that. They said they want to talk about the history, so they'd like me to be involved in the first one, which I understand. But yeah, that's just something I can't commit to on a regular basis. In order to commit to that on a regular basis, I'd have to stop doing this.
Full disclosure, Manny has the busiest freaking schedule I've ever seen somebody have in his life. The man plays in the band at his church. He has something every night of the week going on. He is definitely busy. But we'll try to get you guys the details of that as they come out. But let's go ahead and
I'm going to give a shout out, man. Since you're going to talk about my busy schedule, I'm going to give a shout out to my wife. I couldn't do it without her.
Hey,
honestly,
we all know that's the truth. We all know that's the truth. But let's go ahead and get things started here with the great classroom debate. And I've been wanting to talk about this for quite some time here. This was one of our, this has been on our agenda for quite some time. What is acceptable? And we've talked about this in many forms, but what is acceptable to teach in classrooms, and why is it or why isn't it? And we have a story here on this from a local, I believe it's South Dakota news affiliate here.
We are Siouxland proud. This is KCAU 9 News at 10.
And thanks for joining us this evening. I'm Tim Seaman.
And I'm Sophie Erber. South Dakota's Governor Kristi Noem has signed an executive order tonight banning the teaching of critical race theory in the state's K-12 schools.
KCAU 9 reporter Dylan Adams tonight takes a look at what impact that order could have on Siouxland educators. It's in our top story at 10.
Hey, Tim and Sophie. Governor Noem signed House Bill 1012 into law last month, even though its amended version took out all mentioning of critical race theory, causing her to double down on the bill's original intent through an executive order. Governor Noem's latest executive order aims to restrict the teachings of critical race theory in K-12 classrooms by directing the state's Department of Education to ensure that none of their content standards promote inherently divisive concepts. Those concepts are defined in the order as, quote, advancing any ideas in violation of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, including that one race is superior to another, that a person should be discriminated because of their race, or that meritocracy or traits like a strong work ethic are racist and were created to oppress members of another race. Dr. Timothy Shorn teaches political science at USD and talked about the impact this order could have on South Dakota education in the future.
What one person can find divisive, another person will find completely acceptable. And if it's interpreted too broadly, we might eliminate some really interesting discussion, especially for high school students, and perhaps even going down to middle school and before.
The wordage in Executive Order 2022-02 is very similar to House Bill 1337, which was shot down by the Senate Education Committee this session because it dealt with K-12 schools curriculum, something legislators believe should be left to the DOE to decide. The use of executive power after the session had already ended makes Shorn believe there was an underlying motive to this decision.
Is this an attempt to get what she wanted because the legislature didn't pass what she considered to be necessary. And that will, of course, raise questions about executive overreach.
And the executive order says if any Department of Education policies promote inherently divisive concepts, they must be removed by October 1st. For now, Dylan Adams, KCAU 9 News.
So, Manny, this is what brought me to this, that we're still talking about CRT. Now, I want to sit there. I want to talk about a couple things that they mentioned during that story. The first thing, I disagree with the gentleman. He said that CRT, he was saying that it could promote good conversation between high school students, which I agree with, but also middle school and elementary school students. That's where I draw the line a little bit. Again, this is almost like the talk we had about Don't Say Gay in Florida, where you really, I think it's not an overreach for them to teach something like CRT in high school, where you can have this debate and you will have a much more mature debate. If you get down to the lower schools, they're not fully going to understand this. And that's where I can kind of see we're kind of indoctrinating our students so that by the time they reach high school, they're automatically going to think, okay, everything about what we do here in this country is racist and so on and so forth. So I'm okay with high school, but middle school and the lower branches, I'm not so comfortable with them having some sort of debate conversation and then be able to fully grasp the concepts that we're speaking about here.
I'm still not completely sure what the critical race theory thing is, in all honesty.
Mm-hmm.
I have tried to sit there and listen to stuff about it, and even while those videos were playing that you just played, I mean, I am not grasping what they're saying critical race theory is.
So essentially, CRT teaches the kids that America is inherently racist by its policies, and that America, through its own, people doing things and the people making the laws and what have you, have oppressed minorities throughout our country's history. I don't,
and there
like
are
I said,
some facts that are shown that is true.
Correct. And that's why I think for a high school level where they can actually grasp it, that's where I think it belongs. But if you're asking me to say, hey, take this 10 and 11-year-old and teach them CRT, are they going to grasp the weight, number one, of the fact that, yes, there is some things in this country that we should be rather ashamed about? And are they going to have enough of a thought process to question things, too, at the same time? But
when you're looking at U.S. history, I mean, are we supposed to gloss over the entire 50s and 60s? Are we supposed to gloss over the 1800s?
Well, I completely agree there. I completely agree with you. But like I said, I think CRT being taught should be more of not a debate, but you should always be able to question everything. I don't think that a younger student will be able to grasp enough to question anything that they're being, taught. Are they going to fully understand the situation that happened in Tulsa? Which, by the way, a big story came out today that the Supreme Court allowed a lawsuit to move forward that could potentially pave the way for reparations for the Black Wall Street massacre. I didn't know about Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma until I was 27 or 8. I never even heard of it. I didn't know it existed. And then, of course, now I know about it, and I'm like, holy shit, that was crazy. Because, the country saw that this oppressed minority, was kind of coming up in the world, and they decided to put a stop to it because we can't have that happen, apparently. Terrible, terrible decision making. But I think that does have its place in school. But I also think that, it should, again, you should open yourself up to maturity levels and things like that before you start having this debate about whether, about these theories, because again, it still technically is a theory.
Right. I just think that there's some things that, you know, 5th and 6th graders can handle.
True.
You know,
true.
if we can teach about the Civil War, then why can we not teach about the white only fountains and white only restaurants and stuff like that?
Well, and I mean, we do teach about that currently. We just don't
Right,
teach about
but
the.
what you're talking about is saving that kind of stuff for junior high.
Well, no, what I'm saying is the expanded version of that. So these things that get delved deeper into, into things that people don't know about, like Black Wall Street, like, BLM, like the things that are currently going on in our country with the police situation and the policing in this country. When you delve deep into that, I feel like it takes a certain level of maturity to understand why these things are being called out, why these things are being.
Well, I guess my question is, where are they teaching this?
They're not teaching it anywhere right now.
What subject is this considered?
So I'm assuming it would be, if it were to happen, I'm assuming it would be put into history and it would be added to the history curriculum, which again, we've talked about this before, me and you, that, history's history. Why the hell should we, water it down by leaving these things out? Especially at that higher level, when kids really do need to know that there are some things in this country that we shouldn't be proud of. This country isn't the greatest thing that has ever happened, because we've made mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. But
I mean, we've already whitewashed the natives and everything that we've done to them.
You ain't lying about that either. You ain't lying about that. I mean, as much as I don't understand the pushback from Republicans, DeSantis, Kristi Noem, all these Republicans coming out saying that we shouldn't teach these things. While you may be upset that these things happened and you don't want to give America a black eye, these things can't be ignored, because if they continue to be ignored,
why not?
Then things like these.
Why not? We've been ignoring what's going on with the natives for how many years now?
And that's unfortunate. I completely agree with you. You're absolutely right. And it's a repetitive cycle. What do they say? If you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it. A repetitive cycle. First, it was
right, but they also say that history is written by the winners.
Very true. I mean, that's a good point too. But again, I feel like if we're going to teach actual history, it needs to be based in fact and not the winner's opinion. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I mean, that may be just my opinion. Of course, like I said, I do think that for the students to actually be able to wrap their mind around everything, that some of the deeper subjects should be held into that later category of learning. I don't think that we should absolutely, like Kristi did, where she's absolutely blocked CRT. I don't understand why people are so upset with CRT, besides the fact that it gives America a black eye, and America should be ashamed of.
Right, because you got to look at things like property prices in the suburb areas was a lot cheaper. So they honestly could have built the project housing out there for a lot cheaper, which would have helped minorities.
But of course, because a majority of people that live in the suburbs are of Caucasian descent, they don't unfortunately want the minorities living in their neighborhoods.
Exactly.
And that's a very unfortunate point. But, I had never thought about that. It is much cheaper. That's why people flee the suburbs, besides, of course, fleeing crime and what have you. They flee to the suburbs because it is a much cheaper way to live than living in the city.
Right. So city is more expensive to live in, and that's where they wound up building all of this subsidized housing. And I mean, you're just leaving low class to middle class people having to pay the brunt of these taxes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And they make multiple issues. Like you said, it goes from people not being able to want these people in their neighborhood to people, excuse me, to now you have this tax issue where now, even though it would be cheaper, and maybe that's something that hasn't been accurately explained, because I've never heard somebody, until you just said it right there, break it down like that. But it's 100% true that it would be much cheaper for us to build these housing projects, to build these homes for these people that are struggling and in need in these lower cost areas. It would be much cheaper on the government. Why aren't Republicans on board with that? We're all about saving money for the American people and tax dollars. There you go. There's one of them right there. Hell, Wall Street. I don't know if you caught this. But Wall Street on Friday closed at the lowest number it has closed at since the 2008 Great Recession. I did see that. Abysmal. We should be doing everything we can to cut costs right now. But of course, if you listen to the people in the White House, we need to fund another stimulus. I don't know if you've heard about that one, but the newest stimulus is like $100 a month for gas. So a gas stimulus.
Oh yes, I did hear about that. We had talked about that a little bit. Well, I say we talked about it. I think I shared it in our group message 2 weeks in a row, but we may not have had a show during that time. And
we may have, I'm not sure, but I definitely, now we're trying to spend more money. Again, that's getting off topic, but still, you're looking at these things, and it's piling one on top of the other as far as this stuff goes. And, these small minor changes that are being hit by Republicans and Democrats alike that could make this country a better place are just insane to me. Okay, speaking of crazy people, Ron Desantis is attacking and going after his largest tourism attraction in the Disney Corporation in his state. And we have a story here from Fox News.
Disney is on the verge of losing their special status, which has allowed them to operate like their own government for decades. Here to react is a current Walt Disney Company employee running for Congress, Jose Castillo. Jose, good morning. Great to see you. So you currently work for Disney. You're a conservative and support Governor Ron DeSantis. What are your thoughts on this situation?
Thank you, Carly. Thank you for having me on the show. Well, there's a lot of controversy right now, right? And a lot of people in the media will say that, Governor DeSantis is going after Disney, but this is actually the other way around. Disney has been going after our laws and after Governor DeSantis. When they came out with their statement saying that they were going to repeal that law, you got to read between the lines, because they said their goal was to achieve that. To achieve that goal, they have to get rid of Republicans in Tallahassee, including the governor. And frankly, we just can't allow that I actually brought something I wanted to show you. I have a picture here. It's a picture of my daughter. Mm-hmm. You see, she's 4 years old. I'm a father. I would do anything to protect my daughter. I know that the governor is a father as well. He's got 3 young children, and he will do anything as well to protect his children. So I applaud the governor for having the backbone to stand up to corporations like Disney and to protect children in Florida.
Well, you're absolutely right. And, this whole political dispute is about what critics call the Don't Say Gay bill. And Disney said that they were going to do everything in their power to fight it. I know you know this legislation like the back of your hand. What's really in this law?
Well, it basically says, you can't talk to our children about gender identity, gender orientation. I wouldn't want a teacher asking my daughter, she's 4 years old, all up to third grade, asking her, hey, what are your pronouns? Are you a boy or a girl today? Like, that would just be absurd. But it's frankly, it's just sad that it's gotten to this point because the Disney stock going down, right? So a lot of people have asked me, Jose, why are you speaking against the company? You work for them, and you say, yeah, I love the company, but the fact of the matter is this: if I were to lose my job, I could find another job. I can't find another country. Yeah. I believe that the people that really should be on the chopping block should be the board of directors and CEO and the chairman, because they have a fiduciary duty to protect the investment of the stockholders, and they really forgot about that. And what they're trying to protect is the feelings of a few small minority.
Right. Really quickly, because I'm getting the wrap, but I got to get this last question in. You're a conservative. You work for Disney. The Disney executives were pressured by a group of progressives in the company. How split would you say it is? Do you think that most Disney employees feel that they want to fight the Don't Say Gay bill, or how is that? What is the political makeup of the company really?
Yeah, the people that were fighting it are really a small minority. The vast majority of Disney cast members are parents, grandparents, and believe it or not, at some of the protests, there's been members of the LGBT community, gay members, cast members, alongside with us saying that what the company is doing is wrong.
Very interesting perspective. Jose Castillo, thank you for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade.
Okay, shut up, Brian. Anyway, with that being said, I want to talk about, first off, if Disney is under a self-governing status, then that needs to go away immediately. That's absolutely asinine and absolutely ridiculous.
Disney did that whenever he started building Disney World so that they could get around some of the building codes.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't want to have to follow everything that the state and the county that they were building in. They didn't want to have to follow all of those codes so that they could save money.
Well, it's absolutely asinine that it's still going on today. I'll say that much right now. What I think is also asinine, though, is the gentleman in the clip who's running for Congress, and I apologize, I'm terrible with names. I didn't grab his name. But he said that this is all about saving the children. And Republicans have been using this quite a bit. Save our children, save our children. But when it comes back down to it, it's about that Don't Say Gay legislation.
Right, but the legislation is in place to limit what teachers can say to third graders and younger.
Well, again,
and we talked about this. We talked about this a little while back, that we didn't see it as a big issue because the target was third grade and under.
Again, and that's my question, though. What is it? Do you feel like your child would be in danger if a teacher asked them what their pronouns were? Obviously, again, I feel like it isn't so much.
It isn't so much that the teacher asks a question, "What is your pronouns?" as opposed to a teacher that kind of pushes a child to be different pronouns.
Which would be wrong. Again,
right.
You should never.
So if somebody comes in confused about what's going on or what they want to be, and a teacher takes it upon themselves to push them one direction or the other, you could have a problem.
You could have a problem, but at that point, you need to address the teacher. You don't just get rid of everything, to me. You need to address that teacher because that teacher's the one that's doing wrong. This bill is a broad overreach, or this law, excuse me, as it is now in Florida, is a broad overreach, in my opinion, and a law that is there to fix a problem that is not systemic, but it's just a singular, hey, there's this teacher in this county, this teacher in this county, and this teacher in this county, and we need to go ahead and, let them go because they're influencing in a way that is inappropriate. I don't think
it's that broad at all. I think it is a very good bill. Basically, they're saying our third graders and younger, we don't need to be talking to them about sex.
But again, the key here, unless I'm mistaken, and it's been a few weeks since we talked about it, I thought the bill was K through 12.
No.
Okay.
No,
Is
up
it
to
only
third
up
grade.
to that third grade? Okay. If it's only up to that third grade, then maybe we have a point. Again, I see no big deal about, hey, yeah, little Bobby identifies as a girl. Sure, cool. You do you. And they should respect such. But like you said, the problem comes in if there are teachers out there that are influencing these decisions, that are saying, well, little Billy, I know you're confused, but really, wouldn't you be much happier as a girl? Then that's a problem. That's influencing a child, which no teacher should ever do. I don't think, though, that this bill, I don't think that example is so overreaching that we needed a bill to just dismantle all of it.
It's got to make you wonder what is going on that we haven't heard about, that they decided they needed to create that bill.
True. And I mean, I think we could both agree that if Ron Desantis came out and, I don't know, like with COVID, that we're going to talk about here in a minute, showed numbers, then
All right.
maybe
And
we
I've
could be a little bit more accepting.
you hearted something that I shared on our page.
Did I?
Yeah. Florida mom filing suit after child transitioned at school without her knowledge.
That's unacceptable again.
So, I mean, if you have that kind of stuff going on, you got to look at it like the pedophiles that have been in the schools. How many teachers have you read about that were having sexual relations with students, both male and female?
And it's happening a lot more often now. But is that bill meant to address that, or is it just meant to say, hey, you can't talk about gay people? That's my thing.
No. What I'm saying is you don't know that it's a problem until it really starts coming out how much of it is prevalent.
True.
So maybe they had seen a need to create this bill.
Which, again, I think that bears the need that, hey, Ron could bring a lot of pressure off of his back from Disney, from everybody else, if he was just like, hey, we have numbers that are showing 80% of children are being influenced, and they're having a discussion that is inappropriate, that is not age appropriate, and completely inappropriate in their classroom in, so many schools. Well, then, of course, yeah, absolutely. No, you can't have those discussions. You can't be trying to influence any person to, go one way or the other in any sort of thing. Honestly, in my opinion, the way school is, you shouldn't influence any decision about anything. You should just lay out the facts and, encourage your students to decide for themselves. You know what I mean? That's how I think.
heard a story once told by a doctor who said that they knew a child who was born male and was constantly saying he wanted to be a girl.
Okay.
Through talking, it was later found out that he was saying that because his sister, who was younger than him, he felt was getting all the attention. So he thought if he was a girl, maybe he would get attention too.
But shouldn't that be part of this whole discussion too? Like, before you transition, shouldn't you go to these appointments and make sure that there isn't an underlying situation like this one?
Should be, but we're seeing that that's not always the case. You have teachers that want to listen to everybody and start with what they're saying and try to help immediately instead of getting to an underlying condition.
Right.
So they go ahead and start transitioning them and calling them by pronouns that they prefer, not understanding what's really going on.
But then according to this bill, though, that wouldn't be possible to drill down deeper for these children and make sure that, hey, yeah, little Billy does want to be little Susie. You know what I mean? You can't ask, hey, Billy, why do you feel like you why do you feel like you identify as a girl? Because you can't talk about it. Now, of course, again, do we have a prevalence of third graders, second graders, first graders, and kindergartners trying to be like, hey, I'm a little boy or I'm a little girl, opposite of what their natural born gender is? that's another question I have. Do we have a systemic problem with that as well?
I don't know.
I just feel like this is a bill that addresses a problem that isn't a large scale problem, if that makes sense.
Right.
I feel
Well,
like
I don't know enough about Florida, so apparently you know more than I do.
Oh no, absolutely. I'm just going off.
Then.
I'm going off of assumptions based upon what I've seen reported.
Well,
So
you know what they say about when you assume.
Don't think I know everything, Manny. I may be the white man, but I'm not that white man.
Well, you know what they say when you assume.
Hey, that's true. That's true. But of course, in this case, I'm only making an ass out of myself. Let's be honest here. Okay. Have we finally defeated COVID? And I'm asking this question again for a reason. And it's based upon the fact that 1 week ago or sometime last week, we saw Dr. Fauci come out and say, hey, we're finally out of this. You know, we're moving to that stage where we can get back to normal, but, you know, we may need to pay attention to the numbers. And then, of course, over the weekend, though, we've seen reports that COVID numbers are actually on the rise. So I actually have a story here from, from PBS NewsHour on this, and we'll come back and discuss it.
The U.S. is on the brink of reaching 1 million COVID deaths since the start of the pandemic more than 2 years ago. As that grim milestone approaches, health experts nationwide are debating whether a new phase of the pandemic has already started. I spoke with an expert on this very topic. Dr. Cindy Prinz is the Assistant Dean at the University of Florida College of Public Health. It's great to have you with us. And Dr. Prinz, can you explain for us where we are in the life of this pandemic? I asked the question because Dr. Fauci said on the NewsHour this past week that the country is out of the pandemic phase. He later clarified and said that he should have said the acute pandemic phase. You, as I understand it, say we're not yet in the endemic phase. So why not? Where are we? Help us make sense of it.
Yeah, we're certainly in a better place than we were a couple of months ago when we were dealing with Omicron, but we're still dealing with a pandemic. We're certainly still in a pandemic phase. And I say that because we're still dealing with cases. We're seeing cases actually go up in several places in the country right now because of these other Omicron subvariants. And then also because we're seeing hospitalizations increase. And then there's always the potential for a new variant. And I just don't think that we've necessarily settled into a phase where we have a regular and low level of cases that we're looking for eventually.
So what will it take then to get to a sort of endemic normalcy where people get their COVID shot every year just like they get their flu shot every year and we live with it?
I think where we need to go for that is, number one, for people to get their COVID shot. So that's first of all, we don't have enough vaccination coverage within our country. And then certainly we know that booster coverage is fairly low for those who are eligible for boosters. So that's the primary thing that we need to do. And secondary is that we need that vaccine coverage to also be high throughout other countries in the world. And I say that because this is how variants develop. When you have increase in cases in other places, you have the potential for people to essentially create a variant within themselves, and that can easily be spread to the U.S., to other countries, because our travel is just so fluid nowadays.
I'm interested to get your perspective as a public health expert. When you look at the way the U.S. has handled this pandemic as a case study, when you're talking to your students, what did the U.S. get right and what did we get wrong? Where is there room for improvement as we move forward?
I think one place that there's room for improvement is just in the preparation. So obviously we didn't necessarily have the foresight to know this pandemic was coming at this very time, but certainly we had the foresight to know what we needed to do to prepare for a pandemic. And I think we were a little lost there in the PPE, in the testing, and all of those things that really didn't go well at the beginning of the pandemic. I think the other part of it is the communication, and a lot has been said about that. But being able to communicate with people, what are the precautions they need to take, why they need to take them, having that open communication, and then being very honest when communication has to pivot, when we have to make different recommendations because we're constantly learning during this pandemic.
Is the U.S. prepared for the next pandemic? I've spoken to public health officials who say it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when the next one hits.
I think that's a concern. What happens when we have any kind of public health crisis is during the crisis, we tend to put a lot of money, a lot of effort, and a lot of thought into what's going on. Once that crisis abates, we tend to forget about it. And we've seen that happen in many different cases. And so I do worry that we're not going to continue this preparedness front when we're looking at a new pandemic coming forth. There are a lot of things that we need in place still. I mean, if I even think about things like medical records and being able to share those nationally, vaccine records. We've learned a lot about testing and mass vaccination, but being able to continue that and improve on that and apply that to a new pandemic, I'm not quite sure we're ready for that yet.
Dr. Cindy Prinz, thanks so much for your insights.
So, Manny, I feel like...
is that crap over?
I feel like there's a situation where now we're seeing in the medical community a deep division. We have Anthony Fauci, who, again, I don't know how many times I have to say this during this COVID pandemic, but is the foremost expert on infectious diseases in our country, who is saying we are done. But now, unlike at the beginning where people were saying it's not a big deal, now we have people saying, oh, Fauci, you're a dumbass. You let him go too quickly. What is with this struggle between the two, Manny? I don't understand it, because it's clear that we've gotten past anything that is going to have any levels that we saw early 2020. It's completely clear that we're there. Is it just about pushing the vaccination at this point, that they don't want to move into that endemic stage, or what is the point at this point that we're holding on? Of course, yes, we do see slight rises, but like she said, we're going to see rises and falls. We're going to see shit change from time to time. This is the new normal that we talked about early on in the pandemic. Why are we holding on to, oh my God, we're still doom and gloom?
I think our government, both Democrat and Republican, has a problem admitting when they're wrong.
Okay.
So to double down as to show that they're not wrong, they weren't wrong from the beginning, and they're not wrong now, they continue to push this kind of crap.
They continue to push us away. So what do you think about these people that, again, I keep saying this, but the country's most foremost expert on infectious diseases says, okay, y'all, we can finally relax. We can finally breathe. A guy that you've been critical, and a lot of people that aren't, believers that COVID was that bad, is now saying, hey, okay, yeah, we're cool now. Y'all, we can finally breathe. And now the medical community's attacking him rather than from your side. What do you make of that? It's kind of a head scratcher for me.
I think a lot of that has to do with money.
Okay.
Bottom line, there's always money in. Chris Rock said it the best. There's money in the comeback.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They're not trying to cure anything. It's like the last thing that the U.S. cured was polio.
Right.
So they understand that if they keep you coming back for treatment,
mm-hmm.
then that's more money in their pocket.
That's a very valid point. And, the interesting thing, too, that brings up is if we're in an endemic stage and they all, come to this agreement that we're in this endemic stage, that's going to be less people that are likely to go out and get vaccinated. That's going to be less money flowing in. Maybe that is something that could be, the reasoning behind this, because again, I
would really like to know how much Big Pharma made through this pandemic.
It's a good point. J&J, Pfizer, and what was the other one? I forget the third one. But
Moderna.
Moderna, exactly. All three of them I want to see how much they made on these government contracts because, and to be fair, it's not like we're just sweeping the rug out of them and saying, okay, COVID vaccines aren't a thing anymore. Even Dr. Fauci and the anchor and what have you have said, you know, hey, this is going to be like a flu shot. Every year you may need to get a booster. It's not like we're completely, but then it's not also, it's taking away this fear that the government has over the citizens saying, you have to get this or else you're going to get COVID and hell, you may die. You're gambling with your life. If we move into that endemic phase, that doesn't hold as much weight, does it?
No, it doesn't. Not at all.
It's going to be unique to see how this goes going forward because, again, let's be honest. Has COVID been on your mind in the past? I'm not going to say 6 months, but I'll say 4. Has COVID really been on your mind as big as it was, say, this time last year?
As big as it was, no. Has it still been on my mind? Yes, because I sit there laughing at people that are still wearing masks.
Well, you know, and it's interesting.
Just yesterday, I believe it was, it may have been the day before, Eric and I were driving and we had passed and she noticed that they were in the vehicle by themselves wearing a mask.
That's hilarious. I can't say I've not done it before, though, just because in the height of the pandemic, I would just toss the sucker on without even thinking about it. And then I'd be halfway down the road like, why the hell am I wearing this motherfucker? But no, you know, the other thing, and it's interesting, I go to church and I attend midweek ministry there at that church here in Sherwood. And I actually have a guy who works in the healthcare field there. And he was saying that UAMS is finally, you know, taking away the mask mandates. They've gotten rid of everything that was COVID dedicated because, you know, we don't really need it anymore. There's no need for it. And he said, though, he was like, you know, what's interesting is we may be, even though we are kind of doing the right thing, we may be inadvertently creating the next pandemic by what our culture has become with this pandemic of just sterile and clean. And there's no, because we were talking about my COVID case and he was like, well, it really depends upon your immune system. There's people who are now what, 2.5 years old who have never known a world without COVID. So there's babies that are going to have really weak immune systems now,
right?
Because they've lived in this sterile world.
Yeah. That's something that we talked about pretty early on with COVID on this show.
Absolutely. And it's
when they were pushing for all of the what do you call it? The hand sanitizer. Yeah. When they were pushing for all of that, when they were pushing for the masks, when they were pushing for everything that they were pushing for, we talked about that on this show, how we are going to create a weakened immune system so that when a mediocre bug that normally would have gotten caught in our immune system comes along, it's going to ravage our body.
Well, and you know, it's interesting that you mentioned the hand sanitizer specifically, because I remember when I was in high school, and this was 2008, so that's what, 11 years ago, that, or excuse me, more than that. I can't math tonight.
I was going to say that. Anyway, that just makes me feel old, geez.
But when I was in high school, they were talking then about, hey, yeah, maybe we use a little too much hand sanitizer. Maybe, you know, and it was a thing back then. And then all of a sudden COVID happens and we kind of forgot about it. It was kind of, hey,
right.
Hand sanitizer.
I mean, you're going with the antibacterial soap on everything. You're doing the hand sanitizer every time you touch anything. Yeah.
I swear nowadays, really, you pretty much are like a surgeon just walking in to like pump your gas or something because you're, you know, doing the hand sanitizer and all of that stuff. It's going to create it could potentially, I'm not going to say it is because I don't want to see another COVID, but it could potentially create a big issue that we don't want to have to deal with going forward in this country and in the world.
George Carlin had the best bit about this.
Mm-hmm.
And I encourage y'all to go look it up on YouTube. George Carlin talking about the immune system.
Mm-hmm.
And he talked about, you know, he was raised in New York. They swim in the Hudson River, and that's where they dump all the raw sewage.
Mm-hmm.
So they were tempered in raw shit. And any major bug that comes his way, his immune system knows exactly what to do with it. But you got all these people that wash their hands and use sanitizer, and a small bug will take them out. Yeah, George Carlin has a wonderful bit on it. So I encourage people to go look at that.
That's a great point, but even look at it deeper. Look at this. I work 8 hours a day from my desk at home. I don't get outside as much as I once did.
Right.
That's another thing. Hell, my immune system's probably taken a hit during this whole situation because a lot of us live sedentary lifestyles now. A lot of people are still afraid to go out. Hell, my grandmother still doesn't like to go out. She didn't like to go out before COVID, but you know, her immune system's probably weakened with all the crap that's going on.
Time to get some life insurance on them.
You're crazy. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to our weekly Russia update. And we do have a story, and it seems like, well, I'll save it for after the story, but this is from Good Morning America.
Many shipments have arrived from 7 different nations in the last day carrying military aid for the country. And there's a new warning to Americans thinking about traveling to Ukraine. ABC's Marcus Moore is on the ground in Kyiv, again with the latest. Good morning, Marcus.
Well, Eva, good morning. In the first weeks of this war, the Russian troops were able to get within just a few miles of here on the outskirts of Kyiv. And members of the Defense Force were in this trench and others protecting the city. And they were able to successfully push the Russians back. But they remain on high alert today as casualties mount in the east. This morning, a former U.S. Marine killed on the battlefield in Ukraine. Willie Joseph Cancel is believed to be the first American killed while fighting in Ukraine.
Dedication to community service and national defense is definitely something to look up to as a role model for anyone. Willie was no exception.
President Joe Biden calling his death very sad, saying he left a little baby behind. Press Secretary Jen Psaki doubling down on the plea for Americans to stay out of the war zone.
Americans should not travel to Ukraine for any reason.
In the east, Russia, still vying for control of Mariupol, met with resistance from Ukrainians at the Azovstal steelworks. In Ukraine's capital of Kyiv, Russia's defense ministry saying their high-precision missiles were responsible for the deadly attack on an apartment building. The blast within close proximity of the UN Secretary General on the ground meeting with Ukrainian President Zelensky. A Ukrainian journalist killed in the shelling. Local officials saying 5 missiles total were aimed at the capital city. This as a nearby railway hub in Fostiv was left in ruins after more Russian attacks. On Friday, Putin accepting an invitation to attend the G20 summit in November, just weeks after Biden called for Russia to be removed from the group. And a rare display of emotion from Department of Defense Press Secretary John Kirby, choking up after being asked whether or not he believes Putin is a rational actor.
It's difficult to look at the It's difficult to look at some of the images.
In a warning to Russia, Kirby saying the Pentagon is comfortable with their nuclear deterrent posture in place.
We urge Russia to stop escalating the rhetoric with respect to nuclear weapons and do the right thing. End the war today.
Russian attacks coming from both land and sea, now claiming they hit Ukrainian power substations using Caliber missiles fired from submarines in the Black Sea. And this morning, we're with a battalion of the Territorial Defense Force as they train on patrols and ambushes. Some you see here have combat experience, but others had everyday lives before joining the fight. Mark was a college student.
Why did you want to join?
That's not a question like why, because you need to do this.
And another look at one of the trenches the Territorial Defense Force is using to protect the city. They are training more fighters here and staying ready just in case the fight comes back to Kyiv. And they tell me they are prepared to fight for however long it takes.
All right, Marcus, more for us this morning. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here.
So, Manny, with the Russia situation, every week it seems like they're ratcheting up everything that they're doing. Heavier strikes, more massive warheads, things like that, you know, more destruction. Weren't these sanctions and things like that meant to prevent their ability to do this? And do you think these sanctions are really having an effect? Because right now we're not seeing a desired effect. What we're seeing is the Ukrainians basically being able to do something that we didn't think they would be able to do, and basically fend for themselves. Whereas, yeah, we're sending them weapons, but these sanctions aren't doing shit to help, really. It's just pissing Putin off.
Yeah, the sanctions aren't doing anything. I mean, we had talked about the sanctions and how weak of a move that would be, you know, several months ago. But then we kind of crawfished on that when we saw that, hey, maybe this could be something, because it seemed like they were going to have problems with several of their financial deals. I mean, their economy was starting to run into the ground and all that. But for some reason, they're still able to afford the military stuff that they need for one reason or another. You know, I've heard that they have some kind of draft, so that explains the manpower that they have. But all the equipment, I don't know where all that's coming from, unless it's just old, outdated equipment that they happen to have a lot of.
Right. I also wonder, and you brought this up on the show before, but I wonder the China factor. Is China helping them be able to do this at this point?
China or North Korea, yeah.
I think it's a very valid point that we could be seeing China helping out Russia without, you know, doing so in front of the public eye.
Right.
I think it's very possible. I'm not saying that that's 100% the case in this instance, but it's definitely disturbing that we bounce back and forth based upon, it seems like, the week, almost like COVID, that, oh, they're working, they're doing great, Russia's about to collapse, to, oh shit, Russia's actually in this. And, you know, I hope this doesn't go on this long, but maybe we'll start seeing some issues if this stretches out into the winter.
Right.
But then again, the Russians are used to that climate. So again, I think what we're seeing is, like I said, little to no help except for with weapons from the U.S. and a Ukrainian force and the people of Ukraine willing to fight for their country so much that they're overachieving right now.
Right.
And that's very hazardous as far as everything goes with this. You can only overachieve for so long. Eventually,
right. I mean, there's still the issue of war crimes. Is that really going to be taken into account of?
George W. Bush again is a war criminal. I mean,
right.
Are they going to go extradite Vladimir Putin out of Russia to fucking bring him up on these charges? No. War crime is, you know, it's a show thing. We're doing this for show, just like these sanctions. And now I feel like we're getting to the point where I'm like, okay, either we need to do something or we need to fucking just say, hey, Ukraine, y'all got this. Because I feel like we're standing in Ukraine's way a little bit, honestly. We're poking the bear while Ukraine's over here trying to fight the bear. You know what I mean?
Right. It also has them hanging out Waiting to see if we're going to help or not.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of where we are. It's a little bit of chicken between the Ukrainians and the Russians, where Russia's just sitting back saying, okay, we're going to keep bombing the shit out of them. Is the U.S. going to do anything? And Ukraine's like, hey, motherfuckers, we'd like some help here, instead of y'all just behind them, poking them with a stick, making them more and more pissed off.
Right.
I think, again, we're doing more harm than good by what we're doing. If we were to just back off with the sanctions and then hand the Ukrainians the weapons they need, I feel like Ukraine may be in a better position.
Yeah,
just
definitely.
the way I look at it. Okay.
I agree.
Okay. So let's get into this one. I think me and you may have an interesting talk about this. Illegal immigrants now have access to free health care in Illinois. And we have a story here. I believe it's from MSNBC on this.
Hi there, Dina and Pat. There's a big price tag on this bill. It's $271 million estimated every year. Supporters of the bill say that it would, in the end, save taxpayers of Illinois money. This is House Bill 4437. It expands health care coverage, as you said, to nearly 150,000 low-income immigrants ages 19 to 54 who do not already have coverage either through the Affordable Care Act or through expanded Medicaid. Immigrants 55 and over already have this type of coverage. The groups here argue that by not having those people covered by health care, it costs Illinois hospitals right around $870 million a year in charity care, which then drives up the costs for everyone else. They say this program cuts the costs by 2/3.
It is time to make sure the 149,000 people that live in this state right now, worried about an emergency room visit, worried that they've worked 60 hours a week every single day during this pandemic, that they cannot afford to go to the doctor, that they cannot afford an emergency room, that they know that Healthy Illinois will lead the way in the General Assembly of Illinois.
Healthcare for all is a fight that we must continue to take on. That we are not done in this fight till every single person has quality healthcare provided to them. And that's why I am proud to stand with you all today to make sure that we are expanding Medicaid in the state of Illinois until finally there is some leadership on the federal level.
The bill being considered in Springfield right now, if it is passed, Pat, as you mentioned, Illinois will become the first state in the country to offer such health care guarantees to almost all of its residents. We are live in Portage Park. Sean Lewis, WGN News.
Manny, I'm kind of mind blown by this. We talk about free health care and how everybody needs access to this health care and taxpayers are going to pay for it and so on and so forth. But the first community that we offer this free health care to is a group of people that don't pay these taxes, that don't have any sort of financial skin in the game, so to speak. Yes, I understand that these people worked tirelessly throughout the pandemic. Yes, I understand this. But guess what? They would have access to the Affordable Care Act and all of this if they decided to enter the country legally. Here's something that I'm not going to waver on. I can waver on it, making it easier to become a citizen. I can say that. I would like to see that happening. But there is no excuse whatsoever. There are plenty of taxpaying citizens that worked their asses off during that pandemic that still worry about one emergency room visit. There are still plenty of people at my level, and I don't think I'm low income by any stretch of the imagination, that worry about one fucking emergency room visit. And it's going to cause them to go into financial turmoil. That is the people that you need to address. Once we get the citizens of this country taken care of, then we can worry about other people's citizens.
I wholeheartedly agree. The things I will argue with you about is it's not even about the people that worked tirelessly through COVID. All right. Let's go all the way back to the 80s. The people that had come out of the military after fighting for this country in Vietnam, who are now homeless, who now have no real medical treatment because, whether you want to admit it or not, the VA is a joke.
Honestly, why don't we
Okay.
reform the VA while we're at it before we do that?
Right. There are so many groups of people that are citizens, as you have pointed out, that deserve this kind of treatment far before people that decided to just cross the border.
Absolutely. It's disheartening to me that you look at this, and I'm not saying that you take them off the priority list. I'm saying there are people that are out there that will be struggling, that will be doing all of this, while these people who aren't paying in, who aren't doing these things, are now getting this free health care. Whereas the citizens who worked tirelessly throughout, like we said, the pandemic and beforehand, veterans of this country are left to rot while we've got to take care of these people, because guess what? They came to America seeking something. Well, gosh darn, everybody came to America, or somebody's ancestors came to America at some point seeking, freedom and seeking all of these things. And guess what? They did it the right way. They did it in a way where they will pay their taxes. Well, they will become productive members of the society, and they will not be a financial drain on this country that they want to call home. I'm sorry, I'm half hot about this.
Yeah, definitely. I understand. I mean, it makes no sense why, and I don't know that I can actually say the Democrats, because I don't know how many Republicans are backing this, but it makes no sense why these politicians want to forsake the American people.
I
don't get it.
It's like their thought process is ass backwards. Democrats like to talk about how they want to take care of the home front, and then we can worry about helping everybody else. But guess what? Your policies aren't taking care of the home front. Your policies are hurting absolutely every American. Your stimulus checks that we didn't need are what caused the stock market to close at the lowest level that it's been at since 2008, when we had a recession. Guess who the president was then? George W. Bush. And guess who gets blamed for that? George W. Bush. Guarantee you that if I watch tomorrow on any of these financial news networks, Joe Biden is not getting the blame for this.
Right.
It's a double standard that just literally, it frustrates me to no end.
Well, and one of the things that I talked about when COVID started out, and I believe you agreed with me, was when you're talking about medical stuff, you should not be allowed to hoard your findings to yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, we talked about that. And yeah, I absolutely agree with you.
These are all instances where you need all your different companies helping each other to find cures, to find better treatments. And this goes into what this topic is. I mean, if they would cap what hospitals and medical staff and all of that can make off of the price of a Tylenol in the emergency room being as much as it is, it makes no sense.
Whereas I could send somebody to Walmart right now and buy, I think me and Haley get the like 500 tablets at a time for like $10.
Yeah.
But go to the emergency room and that same Tylenol is going to cost you damn near like $300-400.
Yes.
It's insane.
It's ridiculous.
And I mean, I am lucky that I have the VA. But at the same time, you make a very good point. We talk about how we've taken care of the veterans in this country with the VA, but guess what? That level of care isn't amazing. I'm going to give you that. I mean, we all know this. And these are things that, while I dislike his presidency as a whole, you look at certain things that Donald Trump was doing and you're like, damn, I wish we could have seen that through. Kind of like going after Big Pharma and places like that. I wish we could have seen that through, because I wish we would have known what it would have ended. Because yes,
Right.
the medical industry is the fucking mob of today. Let's be honest here. They get to do it legally though, and it's
that's why I don't really push for another term under Trump. If he had 8 years that he could do something, that would be great. But having his terms broke up like that,
it's gonna hurt.
He's not going to be able to get anything done.
Agreed. Unless another Republican followed him in the next. Having 4 years to fix something that was screwed up way back in Carter and maybe even before then doesn't happen in 4 years. It can't happen overnight. And while we're talking about the economy and things that are screwed up, Joe Biden has decided that he is going to take out student loans. Well, he hasn't decided, but through his actions, he is telling us that he is going after student loans and these banks, and he wants to completely default on all student loans and clear the slate. And we have a story here from NBC News on that.
President Biden signaling he might forgive most federal student loan debt. Congressional aides confirming to NBC News the president discussed his options in a meeting with the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, telling members, you're going to be happy with what I do about student loan debt relief. NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ali Raffat joining me now. So, Ali, the president met with the caucus for about 90 minutes yesterday. What do they want him to do about student loan debt, and how's the GOP trying to stop him?
Well, Allison, student loan forgiveness has been something that President Biden campaigned on during the 2020 election, but since taking office has been largely quiet about until, as you mentioned, this meeting with the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, this closed-door meeting at the White House yesterday, where sources tell us he was open to a couple things. We know, according to sources, that one California Democratic Congressman, Tony Cardenas, specifically mentioned two things. He asked President Biden to, number one, extend the moratorium on student loan payments, which under the Trump administration we know was extended to August 31st because of the pandemic. And secondly, he asked that Biden cancel up to $10,000 of debt per borrower. And sources say that Biden was receptive to these requests, but no specific deal or agreement was made. And this has been something that's been pushed by Democrats for some time now. They say that young people are really struggling to, even before the pandemic, recover from tens of thousands of dollars in student loans. Now they're drowning under nearly $2 trillion total of student loans coming out of the pandemic. Some argue that Biden does have the executive power to get this done. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said today that he is working with Biden on getting some sort of action done on this. But Republicans, meanwhile, say that this isn't possible, that this would only add to the national debt and cause more problems. And they're trying to put this out before it even gains any steam. A group of Republicans actually introduced legislation earlier today that would bar the Biden administration from doing anything about this. It's specifically called the Stop Reckless Student Loan Actions Act, and it says the executive branch has, quote, abused the power to pause these loan payments since the first moratorium under the Trump administration, and by constantly extending this moratorium. And Allison, it's really unlikely that this bill goes anywhere, considering there is a Democratic majority in the Senate. But it really shows us that the opposition is there, and that could be why the Biden administration has been slow to act on this. And we really haven't heard much from President Biden since taking office about student loan forgiveness, besides him extending repeatedly these moratoriums on payments. We have also heard from sources familiar with the Biden administration's thinking that it's unlikely that this will be completely taken away in one sweep. They're saying that it's much more likely that the forgiveness forgiveness will be implemented in something similar of a fashion to the COVID relief checks that we've got that are depending on borrowers' income, Allison.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today.
So Manny, again,
You finally caught me eating.
Yes.
Finally.
It wouldn't be an episode of American Idiots if I didn't catch you eating.
Yeah, but usually I've got it swallowed and cleared in my mouth by the time you come back.
I don't know how this is even a question right now. So if we were not in the financial turmoil that we are in as a country, then maybe, okay, yes, this is okay to explore. But knowing what we know, knowing that we have all this debt, and we added to this debt with these stimulus checks that we sent out during the pandemic, why now? Why? I literally, I don't understand. Do Democrats just think money is a never-ending thing when you get up to the federal level of government and they can just spend as much as they want? Or
my honest thoughts behind this whole thing is he is trying to throw anything out there that these younger Democrats have been pushing in hopes to raise his level, his acceptance level. In all honesty, I mean, we're halfway through his term right now.
Yeah, just about.
He's thinking about re-election.
Oh yeah, and
I've got to come back with these promises that I've already promised and didn't really do anything on, in hopes to get elected my second term.
Absolutely. And I believe he did tell somebody recently, I believe it was Obama, that he is going to run for a second term. So that question's out the window as to whether he would actually make that move. But, again, knowing where the deficit is, knowing that, number one, is strategically, this is stupid. This is a stupid move. Number one, Republicans are going to jump on this like crazy. Like, hey, look at the fucking debt seal. Look at the debt right now.
Right.
Because of these stupid decisions that Democrats are making. And it's going to be a very successful strategy because, again, you don't have a Donald Trump unless, he decides to run. You don't have a Donald Trump for people to go out and vote again. So you're not going to get the turnout that you got in 2020. These are things that it just seems like he's making moves to try to appeal to the base when he needs to make moves to appeal to the overall American people to keep himself in office. But here's the thing. I mean, at the same time, part of me is torn. Like, blow the shit up and fuck everything up so we can go ahead and get rid of you in 2 more years, or at least make some smart decisions in the meantime.
Right.
We can still get rid of you in 2 years. Like, I'm torn.
I mean, when you start looking at this stuff, this goes back further than what he's looking at. This goes back further than COVID. This goes back further than him want to forgive. This is the media and school pushing for children to go to college.
Right.
When college isn't the necessary step for everyone.
Exactly.
And when you start looking at these people who are saying that they're not recouping the money that they spent, well, I'm sorry that your communications degree didn't pan out for you. Maybe you should have gone for a degree in something that is actually needed.
Let's be honest here, though. Even that communications degree, you know how many people talk about how they worked their way through college and came out with zero debt? It may suck. But guess what?
Right.
It's obviously possible. It's not
right. With your
impossible.
Pell Grants and with so many different places that you can apply for, what's it called?
Let's be honest. Join the military if it's that bad. The military will
Correct.
pay 100% of your fucking college tuition.
Right.
It's asinine to me that, again, I said it in the subtitle here. Are we teaching our youth to default on debt? And I think we are. I think what Democrats are doing by doing this is showing, okay, yeah, you can default. There will be no major repercussions because eventually, whether it be the government or somebody else, we'll always be here to bail you out if you get in financial trouble. You won't ruin your life.
Yeah, once you graduate and get that art history degree, we'll go ahead and, we'll bail you out because there's not anybody going to be hiring a art history major.
Exactly. It's rather sad. And for the final topic, we have another one that I think is just Biden turning around and appeasing people. And I don't know if they're going to go over it in the story, but I'm going to go over some of the crimes that some of these people were convicted of in these 78 individuals. So here we go.
Just this morning, the White House announced President Biden plans to grant clemency to 78 people, his first such action since taking office. 3 will get full pardons, while the remaining 75 will see their sentences commuted. All but 1 are serving sentences for nonviolent drug offenses. The move comes as the White House announces several new measures intended to overhaul the criminal justice system by relying less on prison to punish nonviolent drug offenders and to use employment programs to prevent those formerly incarcerated from returning to prison. Let's bring into the conversation White House Domestic Policy Advisor and Director of the Domestic Policy Council, Susan Rice. Susan, it's good to see you this morning. So tell us a little bit more about this program and the president's decision. How did he choose these 78 people who were incarcerated? What kind of offenses were they in jail for? And what is the goal, not just for them, but for nonviolent drug offenders going forward?
Well, good morning, Willie. It's good to be back with you. Let me put this in context. First of all, April is known as Second Chance Month, the month in which we recognize the value and the humanity of offering a second chance to those who have made major mistakes in their lives, and particularly those who are returning from prison. The president announced today 2 important steps. One, as you mentioned, were the commutations of 75 nonviolent drug offenders who on average had served almost 10 years of their sentences, many of whom had been on home confinement successfully during COVID, and 3 full pardons. But in addition to that, Willie, we're announcing today a set of very expansive actions, 20 actions by 12 agencies that taken together will make it easier and better for those who are coming out of prison to get jobs, get housing, get back on their feet. Why are we doing this? Not just because it's the humane thing to do, but because it's the smart thing to do to fight crime. Back in June, the president laid out a comprehensive strategy to fight violent crime and gun crime. It's putting many more cops on the street to do accountable policing. It's funding the police. It's taking ghost guns and other violent and other deadly weapons out of the hands of criminals and going after repeat offenders. It's about community violence intervention efforts that help prevent violence in our communities. It's about putting in place the kinds of strategies that reduce the overall risk of violence, including education, housing, and the like. But one piece of that comprehensive strategy, Willie, is helping formerly incarcerated people get back on their feet so that they're not going back and committing further crimes, that they are able to be productive members of society. So that's what this piece of the pillar is about.
Ambassador Rice, good morning. It's Jonathan Lemire. The president's granted his first full pardons. I wanted to ask you about one in particular, Abraham Bolden, who's the first black Secret Service agent assigned to a presidential detail. He faced federal bribery charges that he attempted to sell a copy of Secret Service file. A witness later admitted that he had lied. Explain to us why this particular case moved the president. Tell us a little bit more about him.
This man was the first African-American Secret Service officer. He's 86 years old. He was wrongfully convicted of a crime that now most everybody believes he did not commit. And he has waited all his life, having lived and tried to serve honorably, for his name to be cleared. And I think the president felt very passionately that he was extremely deserving of this full pardon.
It's called the Incarceration to Employment Program. Admirable effort to get some low-level nonviolent drug offenders and keep them out of prison now that they're out. I do want to ask you, in your role as domestic policy advisor, Ambassador Rice, about what you see with the economy right now. Obviously, historically low unemployment, more jobs than we can fill, and yet inflation also up at the highest levels we haven't seen since about 40 years ago. This is a political problem, as you know very well, going into the midterm elections, but more importantly, it's a real world problem for people at the gas tank or the grocery store. What can you do from where you sit? What can the president do from where he sits to bring these prices down?
Well, Willie, as you said, there's much good news in the economy with record low unemployment rates, more people back in the workforce, wages going up. But yes, inflation is a real concern, and it's painful for most families. And so what the president is trying to do is first of all, reduce the factors that are contributing to inflation, our supply chain challenges, working to reduce gas prices by letting more of our petroleum reserves out into the market, coordinating with allies to reduce the global prices through increased supply, working on the food price challenge as well. So we are working to approach this in a comprehensive way. But Willie, the reality is the inflation we're facing, a lot of it is a function of what is happening with Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine and the price impacts of Putin's policies, both on energy and on food. And this is a global challenge that we're facing. It's not only in the United States where we're seeing elevated prices, it's all over the world. And
okay, I'm done. It's Putin's fault. God bless. It's all Putin's fault that our fucking economy's in the shithole it's in. He's a bastard. It wasn't in the shithole beforehand. So much stupidity. So much stupidity.
And when you started getting into the economy stuff, I was like, seriously?
Oh yeah, no, I saw your look. I saw the look on your face. It's all Putin's fault. And then so obviously I'm no person that can, understand body language and so on and so forth. I didn't go to school for that or anything, but I'm just saying that many uhs and ums lead me to believe that you're not too confident in what you're trying to tell us right now.
Right.
Just tossing that out there. But
that being said, getting to the topic.
You're right. So she talked about low-level offenders, and she talked about a gentleman who was the first Black African-American Secret Service agent who was accused of taking bribes. I'm sorry. I understand that you believe that he's wrongfully accused, and he may very well have been wrongfully convicted. Let him fight that out.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely something that you need to look at all the evidence. Apparently there was enough evidence to convict him. And most of the time stuff like that goes through multiple appeals. So not only was he convicted once, the evidence stood for him to remain convicted, however many times he happened to appeal it.
Absolutely. And I looked at some of the other names on this list and what they were convicted of. We're talking about trafficking methamphetamine with intent to distribute. We're talking about all sorts of hard drugs. So you may consider them low-level drug offenders, but guess what? They're still drug offenders. They still committed.
And I don't think the word they were pushing was low level. The word they were pushing were nonviolent, which is totally different. Now, in all honesty, because I've seen it, just because they are convicted on something doesn't necessarily mean that's what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
If you are arrested, well, at one point, I don't know what the laws are now. At one point, if you were arrested and you had 2 or 3 small Ziploc bags of methamphetamines, if you had more than 2, you could be prosecuted as a dealer.
Okay.
Therefore, if you happen to buy 3 or 4 small bags of methamphetamines and then got caught with it, or even if you happen to buy it from an undercover agent, well, now you've got more than the limit to declare it as personal use. They can hem you up for with intent to deliver.
But see, Manny, here's my thing. No matter what, so again, marijuana, drug offenses, okay, yeah. If this was 78 people convicted of marijuana drug offenses, cool, sure, whatever. We're talking about larger, harder substances, methamphetamines, cocaine, things like that. That's where I'm like, okay, they committed this crime. Like, it's not weed where we're becoming socially acceptable. No, these crimes are drugs that are actually hurting these individuals. So that's why I'm like, are we placating the people here a little bit? Are we again trying to, give our numbers a boost there by saying, hey, yeah, look at this criminal justice reform. I'm getting rid of all the drug offenders, getting them out of jail, and then releasing them back into the streets where they belong. Like, I don't know.
I've seen crooked cops do all kinds of things, so I'm not going to put it past a police officer to say that they found something in a vehicle that definitely wasn't there.
That's true too. That is definitely true.
But like I said, I have seen things with my own eyes. For 6 months, Mike, I was on methamphetamines.
Really? I never knew that.
Yeah. Quit cold turkey. I'll say 6 months, close to a year. Closer to a year. Just stopped doing it one day. So I can understand where, yes, it's a harder substance, but I wasn't hurting anybody. I wasn't stealing to get the money to go do it. And had I been pulled over at some points, they definitely would have had me with an intent to deliver, because I definitely had more than I should have had at one time. So that's where I can see these nonviolent offenses being let go.
Right. Okay. And I can kind of see.
And you also have to think about, the 70s and 80s with the cocaine that was coming around.
I can
you had everybody from, people in the streets to political figures, rock stars that were just partying and doing cocaine. They weren't hurting anybody. They were just using it to party.
I can see your point. Now that you're breaking it down on that level, I can definitely see your point to what you're saying.
No, if they're letting people go that had been breaking into houses to try to be able to get their drugs, I can understand throwing a fit about that. But these are non-violent cases.
Okay. That's interesting. Very good point. And see, sometimes all we have to do is listen. Just saying. Just saying. Okay, American Idiot of the Week. This week I'm going to go with one that's a little bit off the wall. I don't know if you've been paying attention to this because you're not really on the TikTok and all of that like I am. But this Johnny Depp defamation suit is the most hilarious damn thing I've ever watched. Like, they literally asked this man. So Johnny Depp was trying to piss in the foyer, right? No.
Right.
Well, you saw Johnny Depp's penis, right? No. Are you sure you didn't see Johnny Depp? Like the funniest shit I've ever seen in my life. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, my wife had sent me a video of them trying to stop a lot of the stuff that he's asking, but they're asking the questions, and when he starts to talk about it, they keep throwing that hearsay out there.
Yeah. It's
So yes,
hilarious.
I have definitely seen some of that.
It is the worst damn, like, her lawyers are just garbage. It's the worst damn shit I've ever seen. So she's my American Idiot of the Week. Amber Heard, I think her name is.
Amber Heard, yes, and Erica actually asked me, or was surprised that she wasn't mine after everything Erica had told me. But no, I came across this story earlier today. They never gave the woman's name, so I'm not sure who she is, but a 26-year-old Oregon woman left a police station, got in her vehicle, drove through the police garage, and down some stairs. I mean, this wasn't a like a big flat of stairs out in the open.
Mhm.
This was in a parking garage. So she
Okay.
got her car stuck in the stairs. And despite failing a field sobriety test, she claimed that it was her GPS that had directed her to go that direction. So she was just following the GPS. So there we go.
Oh, some people shouldn't have technology. Some people shouldn't have technology. Okay, well, Manny, that's pretty much all we got for this week. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we get out of here?
No.
Right on. Well, ladies and gentlemen, for the Manic Hispanic, I am Money Mike. We'll see you next week.